the dead of night, on February 25, 1991, Iraqi tank commanders felt a shiver of fear. But it wasn't just the desert cold. Something terrifying was happening. The sky lit up, not with stars, but with streaks of fire, followed by a sound like a giant tearing the sky apart. This was the sound of America's M270 multiple launch rocket system, the MLRS, and for the Iraqi tank brigades, it was the sound of their own destruction. This event, later called the Highway of Death, sent a chilling message not just to Iraq, but all the way to Moscow. Soviet generals, who had built their entire military doctrine around massive tank armies, watched in horror. Their prized T-72 tanks, the backbone of their armored forces, were being systematically obliterated, and they realized, with dawning dread, that the same thing could happen to them. The Soviet Union's military strategy was simple. Overwhelming force. They envisioned massive columns of tanks, thousands of them, pouring through the Fulda Gap in Germany, crushing NATO forces under their steel treads. This wasn't just a plan. It was their identity. The T-72 tank was the star of this show, a formidable machine, heavily armored and armed with a powerful 125mm cannon. On paper, it was a match for anything NATO had. The Soviets had painstakingly planned how to counter NATO's anti-tank missiles, their attack helicopters, and their ground attack planets. They had an answer for everything. ... Or so they thought. But they hadn't planned for the MLRs. They hadn't planned for what the Americans nicknamed Steel Rain. So what exactly is this MLRs that struck such fear into the hearts of Soviet planners? Imagine a tracked vehicle, looking something like a tank, but instead of a cannon, it carries a boxy launcher loaded with 12 rockets. Each of these rockets is 13 feet long and packed with a devastating payload. Now, here's the truly terrifying part. A single MLRS unit can fire all 12 of its rockets in less than a minute. And these aren't just single-explosion rockets. Each rocket contains 644 MA, 77 dual purpose, which are little submunitions, designed to pierce tank armor from above, where it's weakest. So, in under 60 seconds, one vehicle can scatter over 7,700 of these armor-killing bomblets across an area the size of several football fields. It's not a surgical strike. It's total area annihilation. Now, let's put that into perspective from a Soviet general's viewpoint. Your doctrine relies on concentrating your tanks to break through enemy lines. You need them close together to provide mutual support. But this concentration, which was once your greatest strength, suddenly becomes your biggest vulnerability. A single volley from an MLRS bateria group of about 9 launchers could unleash over 70,000 bomblets on your lead tank division. Imagine the chaos. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, fuel trucks, command vehicles all shredded from above. The attack is so swift and so widespread that there's no time to react, no place to hide. The battlefield is instantly turned into a scrapyard. This is why it was called Steel Rain. It wasn't one explosion. It was thousands of tiny, lethal impacts raining down from the sky. During Operation Desert Storm, the world got to see this destructive power firsthand. On the infamous Highway of Death, Iraqi forces were retreating from Kuwait in long, exposed columns. It was a perfect target. American and coalition forces, including batteries of M270 MLRS, were tasked with cutting off their escape. The result was pure devastation. The MLRS volleys saturated the target zones, turning the highway into a graveyard of twisted metal. Photographs from the scene are apocalyptic. Burnt-out tanks, trucks, and armored vehicles stretching for miles, many with their turrets blown clean off, a telltale sign of a top-down attack. The Iraqi Republican Guards, Tawa Kolna Division, one of their elite units, equipped with Soviet-made T-72s, was effectively wiped out as a fighting force, not in days, but in hours. The Soviet military analysts in Moscow were glued to the intelligence reports. What they saw shook them to their core. Their T-72s, which they had exported to Iraq, were supposed to be yet they were being destroyed with contemptuous ease. It wasn't just that they were being destroyed, it was how they were being destroyed. The MLRS didn't care about the T-72's thick frontal armor. It didn't engage in a duel. It simply bypassed all the tank's defenses by attacking from the top, the most vulnerable spot. This completely negated the Soviet design philosophy of heavily armoring the front of the tank. The Soviets had built a rock, but the Americans had invented a new kind of paper that didn't just cover the rocket, dissolved it. The psychological impact was just as significant as the physical destruction. For Soviet tank crews, the idea of facing an MLRS was a nightmare. Unlike an anti-tank missile, you can't see the MLRS that's targeting you. It can be positioned 20 miles away, well over the horizon. There's no warning, no laser sighting dot on your hull. The first you know of an attack is when the sky erupts and bomblets start raining down. There's no skill involved in surviving it, just luck. You can't dodge. You can't shoot back. You can't deploy countermeasures. All you can do is hope you're not in the kill box. This ability to strike with impunity from a distance and with such overwhelming force was a game. It shattered the morale of anyone forced to operate under its shadow. The Soviets quickly began to reassess their entire land warfare doctrine. How could their tank armies survive long enough to even reach the front lines if they could be targeted and annihilated from miles away? They needed to disperse their forces, but that would weaken their offensive punch and make them vulnerable to other types of attacks. They could try to develop their own version of the MLRS, and they did, with systems like the Smerch. But the Smerch, while powerful, was a different beast. It fired fewer, larger rockets, and was primarily designed for destroying soft targets and infrastructure, not for the specific tank-killing saturation that the MLRS excelled at. The American system was unique in its focused, armor-shredding capability. The Soviets also looked into better top armor for their tanks and reactive armor systems, but retrofitting thousands of vehicles was a monumental task. The fear was palpable. The MLRS represented a technological leap that threatened to make the Soviet Union, as largest military investment its massive tank army obsolete overnight. It was a checkmate move in the grand chess game of the Cold War. It showed that NATO, and particularly the United States, could counter Soviet numbers with superior technology and tactical innovation. It wasn't about a 101 tank duel anymore. The battlefield had expanded into a multidimensional space where an unseen enemy could wipe you out from miles away. The image of those destroyed Iraqi T-72s on the highway of death was a stark warning to the Kremlin. Your armored fist can be shattered before it even has a chance to strike. In the end, the Soviet Union collapsed before it could ever truly solve the problem posed by the MLRS. But the system's legacy lives on. The M270 and its lighter, wheeled counterpart, the HIMARS, have continued to evolve. With new guided rockets like the GMLRs, they can now strike with pinpoint accuracy from even greater distances. We've seen their incredible effectiveness recently in conflicts around the world, proving that the concept of steel rain is more relevant today than ever before. The fear that those Soviet generals felt back in 1991 was justified. They had caught a glimpse of the future of warfare, and it was a future where their mighty tank armies were no longer the kings of the battlefield. The MLRS had well and truly changed the game. Thank you for watching. If you found this look into military history and technology interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.